Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our RANT series. Today, we're going to talk about the recently announced U.S. tour coming up this summer that's going to feature Foreigner. I think it's called the Juke Box Heroes Tour or Juke Box Heroes Tour. Foreigner, Kansas, and Europe, which I think is a pretty cool tour. I don't know about you guys, but, let's face it. We've seen Foreigner does the summer touring thing almost every year. That's a given. And I've had the pleasure of seeing Foreigner numerous times over the last, 5-10 years. Always enjoyable, right? They play all the songs you want to hear. The band is tight as always. You may not know all the current members, but, in most cases you got Mick Jones on guitar, founding member. I know there have been certain shows here and there where he has not appeared at all, which that's kind of odd, but whatever. You got Kelly Hansen, who's been singing with the band for over a decade now. Does a fine job. All right. You've got Kansas, who I just saw, who were absolutely terrific, and I've seen them a couple times with the current lineup configuration. Okay, you got the excellent Ronnie Platt on lead vocals. Steve Walsh has been retired for a number of years now. They still bring it. All right, they play all the old classics. They dig out a lot of cool deep cuts from the archives, play some newer tracks here and there, which are excellent too. Really solid. And then you got Europe. A band who just never tours here anymore, right? Very rarely do we see Europe here in the U.S. So when I heard about this tour, I actually heard about some of the dates they were playing over in the U.K. and in Europe, and I was thinking, wow, bring that here. That'd be kind of cool to see, right? So sure enough, they announced the dates, or at least some of them anyway. So pretty cool summertime tour, I think, to see if you're at all interested in any of these bands. So what was really interesting and kind of prompted me to do this little rant after I thought, wow, this is cool tour. I think I might go check it out if they come to my area, and it looks like they're going to be. Is you see these, especially on Facebook, right? You see these posts from either Ticketmaster or one of the bands or whatever, and they announce the tour and the dates and whatever, and then you see all these comments. And for whatever reason, I started reading some of the comments yesterday, and I was just shaking my head. I was like, holy moly, are some people just absolutely clueless and ignorant? It's just amazing. From all these comments oh, but who's singing? Oh, yes, I love Lou Gramm. Or, oh, if Lou Gramm's not in the band, I'm not going. Or, no Steve Walsh, no Kansas. Or, Europe, ugh. I'll sit in the parking lot till they're done. I never want to hear the final countdown again. All these crazy comments of people who obviously don't know much about these bands at all and probably haven't followed or listened to them in 25, 30 years. Okay? It's really amazing to me. And I guess that's more of the, this topic comes up all the time on this channel. More of the mainstream type folks really don't give a shit about who's in bands or who's come, who's gone, who's retired, new music, all that kind of stuff, because their little bubble began in 75 and ended in 1989. And that's really all they care about. And what was interesting is some of the ads that they put together that I saw coming through my Facebook feed. It's Foreigner, Kansas, Europe. He gets here, feels like the first time. Urgent, Juke Box Heroes, Dust in the Wind, Carry On Wayward Son, and the Final Countdown. And those are the only songs they listed. And I'm like, all right, that's the best you can do here. That's obviously, what they did was list all the major hits from all three bands, because the majority of the people, that's all they care about. So, I can tell you firsthand, I've seen Kansas twice in the last 3-4 years. Dynamite. Put on a great show. I'm assuming that it will be a kind of co-headline gig. I'm sure Foreigner is going to go on last, but I'm sure Kansas is going to get at least an hour. My guess is Foreigner gets an hour and 15, an hour and a half. Kansas will get a full hour. Europe will get maybe 40 minutes or a half hour, something like that. So hopefully for Europe. So, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. If you're one of those people who's thinking, Europe, ugh, that awful Swedish hair metal band, you need to get over that. Yeah, they had that one huge album here in the States, okay, and probably other places around the world, with the Final Countdown and Carrie, whatever. Obviously, the two most commercial tracks on that album, the rest of that album was kick-ass. And I'm not saying those songs are bad. They're just overplayed to death. That is not indicative of what Europe, the band, is all about. Not by a long shot. If you listen to any of their material before the Final Countdown album, heavy, rockin', classic hard rock and metal. If you've listened to, you need to go out and listen to the last like 4 or 5 Europe studio albums. Absolutely killer. If you love like classic Deep Purple, UFO, Thin Lizzy, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, what's not to like? You know, it's just great, dark, menacing, catchy, heavy rock with chunky guitars, blazing guitar solos, lots of Hammond organ, awesome vocals, as far removed from the Final Countdown as anything you're going to hear. So it was just funny to me, like reading all these people who are like, oh, Europe, I won't leave the parking lot till they're done. Because all everybody, especially in this country, all they know about Europe is the Final Countdown, a song that most people here in this country have heard to death and never need to hear again. All right? Although, when the song first came out, everybody was into it, right? Damn straight. So, and then, all these people arguing about, well, there's no way that Kansas should follow Foreigner. Kansas should headline. There's no way that Foreigner should go on anything but last. All this like back and forth about, what the order should be and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, oh, man. I mean, and what's funny is most of the comments you see, and I've seen this for years, especially on like Facebook, are comments from people who ain't going to no show. They don't go to anything. I may not go to as many concerts as I used to, but I still go to, half a dozen a year at least. Probably closer to a dozen. I think I went to about a dozen last year, and that was light for me. But you get all these people who post all these like crazy, angry comments and clueless comments about shit they don't know about. They're not going to concerts. They're not going to see any of these bands. And they're like, oh, I remember in 1977 when, Feels Like the First Time came out. Man, I love that song. And that's the only comment they can muster. Right? Because they're still living in the 70s. There's nothing wrong, folks, with loving the decade, that's your favorite. I'm totally into, because, I love 70s music is my favorite music of all time. But don't make it seem like that's, the be-all, end-all. All these 3 of these bands have put out great music, throughout their careers. It didn't end with those big major hits in 1977 or whatever. But, and it's like, and, I know how it's going to be. Because I'm probably going to go to this show if it comes near me, and I'm going to be sitting there, and during Europe's set, the only songs that are going to get any type of reaction is like the Final Countdown, maybe one other song, because nobody's going to know the other stuff if they play some of the newer stuff. For Kansas, the same thing. People are going to go bonkers for Dust in the Wind and Carry On Wayward Son and maybe one other tune, right? But for the most part, maybe Point of No Return. But for all the other stuff, people, unless you're the hardcore fan, people are like, oh, Journey from Marylebone? The Wall? Same thing with Foreigner. Although Foreigner, plays basically all the major FM radio hits, AM and FM radio hits. So you basically know what you're going to get at a Foreigner show. And Foreigner has not done a lot of new music in the last 20 years, if hardly anything at all. So they generally stay away from that. So they play everything from those first, 4 albums for the most part. Okay? Is what it is. Right? I just think it's funny how people react to stuff like this, and it's just like this whole closed-mindedness that especially with Europe. I just how cool is it that Europe is going to tour here? But I guess people don't care about that. They're just shutting down. They're like, no interest in seeing Europe. I hate the Final Countdown. I don't want it. It's like, well, give the rest of their music a chance. They're probably only going to be out there for a half hour. What happened if you go there and you're like, oh, holy shit, this stuff's pretty heavy. It's pretty rocking. I like this. Wow, I thought they were all about the Final Countdown. But no, people don't think that way. They're like, nah, sorry. Never want to hear that song again. No interest. I'll wait till Kansas goes on. So I feel bad for Europe. Because I think Europe should come around and do like a club tour or something like that and play to their real fans who really want to see them. And maybe they will, since they're going to be here. Maybe they'll do some one-offs and things like that. But, for Kansas, I think it's, Foreigner's got their dedicated summertime crowd that will come out and see them every year. So they'll draw their few thousand people, and that's pretty cool. And I think, while Kansas appeals more to, to a slightly different crowd, there's still enough of those lovers of 70s rock music that Foreigner, Kansas, Styx, Boston, Journey, all that type of thing. So, will the current lineup get exposed to more people this way, to a different audience, to Foreigners fans? Absolutely. Will Kansas fans come out and maybe give Foreigner another try and investigate Europe a little? Hopefully. But we'll see. But it's an interesting tour, and I think it's a little bit of a different lineup because, we've seen a lot of similar configurations over the last decade or so of a lot of these classic bands coming and touring together. How many times have we seen, Cheap Trick and REO Speedwagon, or Cheap Trick and Heart, or Heart and this band, or Boston and Journey, or Boston and Cheap Trick, or, Kansas and Styx, or Styx and Foreigner, or Styx and Yes, or a lot of these similar, because you got these. There's not a ton of these bands, but there's enough of them that they just kind of switch back and forth and tour with them. We'll tour with these guys this year. We'll do with this guys. Blah 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 blah. So this for me is kind of a cool little tour, I think, and we'll see how it does. Like I said, I think I'm going to try and check it out, and hopefully you will too. If you're interested, if you're not interested, hey, whatever, no big deal. Right? Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. Thanks for joining me on this kind of last-minute, spur-of-the-moment rant. Those generally turned out to be the ones that I like to do. I don't like to plan these too far in advance. I just like to kind of, something happens I want to talk about, and I just do it. And hopefully you guys like listening. If you don't like listening, hey, what can I do? See you next time. Bye-bye.